In Civ 6, or Civilization 6, I'm looking at 5 common deity domination mistakes everyone makes in the game. This is all in my opinion, of course, so I'm expecting the comment section to stay clean since we all know everyone on the internet will respect your opinion. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy, it helps out a ton and you won't miss out on future content. And check out my second channel, I posted a new video yesterday, link down below in the pinned comment, where I just fuck around and talk about anything. The first mistake I have right out of the oven is no combined arms. Now, in real life, this is different of course, since combined arms is really important for warfare. I mean, what's a penis without its balls and seminal vesicles as support? But in Civ 6, this is a good way to stall your expansion and give the AI time to build up and get advanced units like crossbows and knights up against your combined land, sea, and air fleet of 2 warriors, a spearman, a rinky-dinky raft, and a preschooler's paper airplane. The way this game works is the numbers. The higher the combat strength numbers, the better that unit does, and different classes of units, while they do have advantages against each other, aren't really necessarily anything to go crazy over. Like swords against spears, spears against cavalry. The combat bonus is so minuscule and small, you'd have an easier time finding thought-provoking content on TikTok. At the end of the day, the only unit type that is less appealing than a Bill Cosby Mai Tai is going to be the spearman. It's like having the Care Bears try to stop Thanos. It's just not going to end well. Even if the AI builds horsemen, because A, the spearman still barely loses even with the 10 combat strength bonus it gets against horsemen, and B, the horsemen can just walk around the spearmen because they ignore zone of control completely, nullifying the Maginot Line ability spearmen have unless they get 3 or so promotions. And if you can get 3 promotions on a spearman, I will personally hand you a gold medal. That leaves ranged units, melee units, and cavalry units. But even building an army, fusion summoning all 3 of them, you're not going to get Blue Eyes White Dragon, you're going to get Barney the fucking Dinosaur. All of these units and others in future eras are on different paths of the tech tree. So in order to build all of them and have a combined arms army, as a lot of new players seem to like to want, you have to research the technology and build the unit, which takes time. The AI isn't going to sit on its ass waiting for you to finish either. By the time you get your army marched up to the border with a general, combined arms to counter everything the AI can possibly throw at you— oh, what's that? A crossbowman? And then your invasion goes the way of a Soviet capitalist. You take so much time in building all these units that you would do a lot better just getting an advanced unit yourself and using that combat strength advantage to get easy victories, get promotions, and continue fighting while the AI is on the back foot, giving you the easy win. Building different unit types is just going to take too much time when you could get a better result by just picking 1 or 2 unit types and hit go. Now, obviously, ranged units are so good, you should have them in each and every era. In fact, I got my own ranged unit body pillow to make sure I'm never caught without it. Whereas melee units are better than cavalry because of 2 main reasons. 1, the only way to tear down walls in the first couple eras is battering rams in the early game, which can only be used by melee units. Doesn't make sense, I know. I mean, you can't ask the horseman to, I don't know, dismount? Is he glued to the horse? Is he a centaur hybrid? Did he get his dick caught experimenting and can't get it out? Some questions even science can't answer. All we do know is that they can't use siege units, so until the Renaissance era, melee is by far superior. After that, you already have lots of promotions with melee units, and the sunk cost fallacy really sinks in, and you just want to upgrade your already tier 4, tier 5 promoted units, which is easier than hard building other units that start with no experience. After the Renaissance, you want wall busters. Planes and artillery are your best option, but as we'll discuss later, artillery for the most part is inferior. But each era, of course, has different best units. Classical era is the swordsman, modern era has the Bin Laden special, so how do you know what units to build? Glad you asked. Classical era, it's going to be swordsmen, rams, and archers. Upgrade them through to the Renaissance era, getting their requisite upgrades. After that, you will want to get bombards in around the Renaissance era, since that's really the only era where it's too early for planes but too late for siege warfare. And then finally, by the time you can build the planes when they become available, boom, we done. Let's head on to the second mistake. Second mistake is a timing issue. What I mean by that is knowing when the AI is going to be getting an advanced technology like walls, advanced units that'll throttle your invasion and make you look sillier than this guy after Shaq stuffed his nuts in his face and then pushed him down. There's no coming back from that. Looking at the tech tree tells part of the story, but the other thing you can look for is techs that are cheaper than others. If the AI you met gets a tech before you, you get a reduced cost for that technology. So if you see the AI advancing in the tech tree and their capital is right on your border, making you more down bad than sundress season, then finding out which tech they have by comparing costs is an easy way to know whether they have the tech you're fearful of or not. The other thing you can do is take into account the time in the game. On Deity, for example, the AI gets crossbows by around turn 60 to 80-ish in most games, so I try to have the war started by no later than turn 50. If I stall and have the force ready by turn 80 to 90, I won't even bother. I mean, at that point, I'm presenting my asshole on an early Christmas present platter, bow tie and all, because crossbows are impossible to take out in the early game, especially if the AI is hiding behind walls that will now two-shot your melee units, since walls get combat strength from the most advanced ranged unit you built. That's why rockets launched from the city centers in the late game hits the enemy warrior like a paper towel. It's because you haven't even built archers yet. This timing works for all the other eras as well, although at that point you should have the snowball rolling along and be making some of the highest science and culture in the game, and at that point you really should have no more problems for domination. What you can also do for walls especially is have a sneak peek into what the AI is building in their cities, sort of like a more moral way of checking into the woman's shower room. Not with spies, but just by hovering the city itself, stealthily of course, you can see if they're building walls or not, and what walls they are. If you see them not building walls, then great, let's go recreate Polish history since time immemorial. If they did build walls, you'll need rams, towers, or best of all, bombards. The final way to peeking Tom your way through the AI's land is to look at what their improvements provide, or even what buildings they have in their districts. Certain techs improve yields to improvements, which lets you do the math and figure out where the AI is on the tech tree and which techs they have or have not snatched up yet. And by hovering over districts, if you see a pristine, shining research lab, you're in Silicon Valley and attacking the Civ, it's gonna have your country looking like the Middle East over the last 20 years. Unless you're Afghanistan or Vietnam, of course, with your plus 20 combat strength against America, then you're good. Another thing I'll add, in most cases, in the early game at least, you'll know whether you're too late or not pretty easily just by doing this one thing for every rush attempt. If you're going for a horseman rush, check to see if the AI is building walls. If they are, you're too late. If you're going for a swordsman rush, if you have two of these three things, or you didn't do two of these three things, the things being Eureka boost to bronze working, Eureka boost to iron working, or only having one source of iron, then you're too late. You need at least two of those three things in order to have a really good chance at a swordsman rush. If you're going for a spearman rush, you already lost. But just by observing what the AI is doing or what they have, you can deduce and determine exactly where the AI is, what they're building, and how to snatch Jadwiga's bathwater— wrong script, excuse me— snatch the AI cities. What do former presidents say about becoming a TheCivLifeR subscriber? Trump, how big did your dick grow after clicking subscribe?
It's really gonna be big. It's not just big, it's huge.
Bush, what do you think of TCLR subscribers?
Weapons of mass destruction.
Biden, what do you say to people who don't want to subscribe?
Will you shut up, man?
Listen,
Bill Clinton, what has subscribing to the TheCivLifeR given you?
Indeed, I did have a relationship.
That's right, by leaving a like and subscribing, you too can engage in the lucrative corruption of Washington, D.C., as well as have pecs so thick you'll be able to catch bullets with more effectiveness than Abe Lincoln's skull, and two, more importantly, not miss out on future content. The third mistake we have is artillery over the course of a game. I can't even begin to describe how garbage, terrible, and atrocious most artillery is in comparison to what you could be doing in that era. This might be a shock to you, but let me explain. There are about 5 different types of artillery: catapults, trebuchets, bombards, artillery, and rocket artillery. Artillery is mainly meant to be a city wall buster, breaking the way through for your melee units to walk in and capture the city. The cost, however, is that they're even lazier than me. If they move once in a single turn on a road, doesn't matter, and you try to tell them to launch an attack or else they're going to be mincemeat in the next turn,
No, I don't really feel like it.
they need full move speed to launch an attack, which is a big reason why Russia's special military invasion has stalled, but you can remedy this with a great general as they whip those artillery units up to shape and let them attack even after moving. Unless you want to attack a unit, because at that point you're better off blowing into your PC, since that'll do about the same amount of damage as an artillery attack because of their second biggest problem. They can't touch units. Unless you're an era ahead, then they do almost nothing to even ranged units in most cases, but you might be asking that that's okay, since siege units are meant to siege civilians hiding out in cities, silly, not actual military units. If your artillery doesn't strike more fear amongst civilians than Sherman's March to the Sea, you're playing it wrong. If it doesn't all end like Goering, then the way you're playing is boring. But the problem with that is siege towers and battering rams exist, are cheaper, and can theoretically do more damage to walls per turn depending on the number of melee units you have or have not. Of course, your melee units do take the damage, but that's still better than flinging a rock into the city center just for it to launch multiple heat-seeking Heimer missiles one-shotting your poor siege engine. And unless you upgrade your early catapults and trebuchets with promotions, they really aren't that effective against cities in comparison to battering rams and siege towers, which in most cases with like 4 to 5 melee units, you'll be able to wipe out the walls in a single turn. Siege towers are 100 times more cost effective than artillery in the early game. Bombards are the only siege unit you need over the course of a game, since they're so powerful they can change the name of Constantinople to Istanbul. There's no Renaissance-era siege tower unit, so bombards are a necessity and are needed to really do anything in the game around that time period when everyone has walls. And even up to rocket artillery and regular artillery at this point, siege units become necessary. Oh, okay, never mind. Our entire siege corps just got overran by some panzers, and planes do more damage to cities while taking less than artillery could ever hope to, and now siege units are useless again. Not because they suck at this point, artillery and rocket artillery are still fantastic, but because they're completely outclassed, outmatched, outplayed, get good noob GGEs, and out-big daddied most of all by the Osama bin Rabi trap card. Look, siege units can still be viable, undoubtedly, but there are almost always better options throughout every stage of the game, aside from around the mid-game where you can only have the Constantinople. The only thing I would say about siege is the only real garbage one is the catapult. I'd say even if you want to use trebuchets, it's still not that good, but it's still serviceable. Bombards are the only thing you can use and are therefore fantastic, and artillery and rocket artillery are completely outclassed by planes. The next mistake is going to make you wish you kept the TheCivLifeR subscriber Magnum 17-inch penile urethra covering condom on, and that is don't pillage or lose cities where loyalty can become a big problem. Whether the AI is in a golden age or whether the AI has multiple high population cities in the vicinity, you will almost always struggle with loyalty early on unless you're playing a select few civs shut up phone. This requires you to usually get a large number of policy cards that help with loyalty, reducing your economic output since you're getting those loyalty policy cards instead of anything else you might need that would give you gold, production, science, culture, etc. But if you end up pillaging a city, it will get war weariness and lose amenities, less growth potential for population, and you will have an impossible time trying to keep the city, slowing down your conquest by leaving your invasion with all the grace and finesse of a panda trying to do ballet on a 15-meter high tightrope. Trying to limit loyalty is really the less glamorous and less thought of option when it comes to world domination, but it is one of the most important. On the flip side, population is also imperative to keep an eye on. If you have to lose cities, for example, then you lose population. You already have to deal with population loss when first taking the city. Why lose it to loyalty or another civ and have to take it again, since every time you capture a city, you lose more and more people until eventually you have a one population city trying to desperately cling to life for a single turn around multiple 15 pop enemy cities. The biggest thing about loyalty is population, and by keeping it high enough, you can have less units garrisoned, more for the invasion force, speeding up your conquests, and preventing having to reconquest cities you've already taken. So in conclusion, you want to keep up loyalty, at least in cities that you first conquered, as high as possible to counteract the reverse loyalty pressure they will face to go back to their home empire, and by not pillaging early, nor constantly losing or having to reconquer the city due to rebellion, you will be able to deal with loyalty a lot easier, as well as not have an amenity suction that you constantly have that reduces amenities throughout your entire empire. Before we get to the final mistake, I have a Discord now, and that's where we talk about the weirdest and craziest damn shit. We have Puggy coming out as the new Eminem, Jared making Schmittler look like a humanitarian activist, chat advocating for a race kerfuffle channel. It's absolutely fantastic. Link in the description, so come join in on the fun as of right now. I have waved to everybody who's joined so far, so try to make me break my streak, and you'll get the honorary TheCivLifeR subscriber role if I don't wave within 12 hours. Best of all, memes are allowed about in general. The last mistake I have is really for people who struggle with domination, since you can pretty much win a domination victory with anybody, including Canada, but not picking an actual domination civ if it's your first time on a new difficulty is a huge mistake. As much as we all wish Jadwiga, Eleanor, or Lady Thick Thighs, preferably all of them, would crush us with their thighs, they aren't the best domination civs in the game. Picking civs actually geared for domination will make the game a lot easier, especially if they have an early game unique unit, or give you something like the Zulu or Babylon, dear Babylon, that give you an advantage in a certain era with combat like the early cores from the Zulu, or Blitzkrieg in the ancient era with Babylon. Some of the best beginner domination civs are easily Persia, the Ottomans, Byzantium, and Rome. Persia has a ranged swordsman unique unit with loyalty bonuses, leaving you just to focus on combat. Ditto for the Ottomans, except the Janissary is the best unit in the game aside from maybe the Tagma, which is why Crusader King Basil is here swinging his plus 10 combat strength religion and cavalry ignoring Wall's abilities around. The last civ, Rome, isn't necessarily a domination civ, but they incentivize expansion with free monuments for an early oligarchy, and a cheap legion iron resource-wise, as well as the fact it is the strongest unit in the game until the medieval era, leaving Rome in the top 4 easily. You can, of course, use other civs, especially ones with unique units, since instead of 20 of the strategic resource requirement, they only cost 5, giving them a huge advantage when it comes to conquests, since you can pay them so cheaply that even restaurant owners would stare at you with disgust. Playing domination civs in general, especially the 4 I've listed, will give you such an incredible advantage that you can focus on the fun aspects of the game while learning the more difficult stuff at your own pace. But what do you think? Comment down below your thoughts and leave a like and subscribe to not miss out on tomorrow's disastrous save, and check out this video in the top right corner for more. Peace.